Hi everyone, my name is Mark, I'm 26, and my girlfriend's name is Kristen, she's 25. We've been together for 5 years now, and honestly, it's been a hell of a ride. I'm a tall guy, about 6'2", and I've got this scruffy beard that Kristen says makes me look like a lumberjack. Kristen, on the other hand, is petite, with long brown hair that falls in these perfect waves. She's got these green eyes that just pull you in, like she's got you figured out before you even open your mouth. She's always been the quiet, bookish type, but there's this fire in her when she's passionate about something. And man, that's just something to see. We met back in high school. It was one of those typical small-town stories. I was the new kid in town, just moved from a bigger city, and Kristen was already part of this tight-knit group of friends. I first noticed her in English class. She sat 2 rows in front of me, always scribbling in her notebook. One day, the teacher paired us up for some Shakespeare assignment. I remember how nervous I was because Kristen was so damn pretty, and I was just this awkward tall kid who didn't know how to talk to girls. We ended up talking for hours about Romeo and Juliet, but honestly, I don't remember much of what we discussed about the play. I was too busy trying not to embarrass myself in front of her. We kept talking after that, just random stuff at first, and before I knew it, we were hanging out after school. We'd walk home together, and it just felt right, like we were meant to be. But it wasn't until a year later, when we were both in college, that we actually hooked up for the first time. It was both of our first times, and to be real, it was awkward as hell, but also kind of perfect. But after that, things didn't really work out the way I thought they would. We drifted apart, like sometimes you do when you're young and dumb, and don't know what the hell you're doing. We stopped seeing each other, and that whole year just felt off. Then, one day, out of the blue, she shows up at my house with her mom. My mom had promised to help them with something. I don't even remember what it was, but that didn't matter. Kristen and I ended up hanging out in my room, just talking like old times. I don't know what came over me, but after about an hour, I just kissed her. And it was like, in that moment, everything just clicked back into place. After that, we started going on dates, and things just took off from there. Fast forward a couple of years, and we were celebrating New Year's together in this tiny apartment we had just rented. It wasn't much, just this one-bedroom place with creaky floors and a draft that wouldn't quit, but it was ours. We didn't have much furniture, so we ended up sitting on the floor in the living room, eating cheap takeout, with a couple of candles that Kristen had insisted we light to make it feel more romantic. I remember the way she looked at me that night, like I was her whole world. And I knew right then that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. We stayed up all night, talking about our future, what we wanted, where we saw ourselves in 5, 10, 20 years. It was one of those nights that just felt like it was out of a movie, you know? So now I'm kind of a programmer, and she's sort of one too. So we're this couple that works 24/7 in front of a monitor. We make decent money together, enough to not worry too much about bills, and about 5 years into dating, Kristen got pregnant. We weren't exactly planning on it, but we were both over the moon when we found out. We had a baby boy, named him Sam, and suddenly, our little apartment felt even smaller, but it was filled with so much love that it didn't matter. But here we are, 5 years together, and about a year ago, we fell into this routine. Everything's the same, the spark's gone, we don't go out anywhere, we just sit at home together all the time. The problem is my feelings for Kristen haven't changed. I still love her, but she's become different somehow, like I don't know. I've been, handling things myself for 2 months now, and she's like, go ahead, I'm not involved. You get what I'm saying? It's a mess. I can't even remember the last time she touched me, and it's like this cold, heavy weight just sitting in my chest all the time. And just about a week ago, I started noticing that Kristen is staying up late playing Dota more and more often. At first, I didn't think much of it, figured it was just a new hobby. And I was even glad she found something to do. She was always a bit of a gamer, but never hardcore into it. So I thought, cool, she's found something that makes her happy. But then, I started hearing her talk to some guy on Discord. I'd be in bed, half asleep, and I'd hear her laughing at something he said, or worse, that low, flirty tone she used to use with me. And it's not like I'm jealous, okay, maybe I am, but it's more that I feel like I'm losing her. Today, I was just going about my usual routine, trying to keep myself busy, doing anything to avoid thinking about how fucked up things have gotten between Kristen and me. So I walk by her computer, And what do I see? A fucking tab open to a porn site. Now let me tell you, that threw me for a loop. Kristen's never been into porn, or at least she's never shown any interest in it before. I mean, hell, I've been handling all my own shit by myself for months now, and she's been nothing but cold every time I try to initiate anything. And no, it's not the kid. That's not the issue. We've got the money to get a nanny or send Sam to the grandparents whenever we want some alone time. But even when it's just the two of us, she's always got some excuse like, nah, I don't want to, or I'm tired. It's like she's not even fucking trying anymore. So I see that tab and I start wondering what the hell is going on in her head. It's like, she's got time for this, but not for me? What the fuck? I mean, I'm just standing there staring at the screen, and all these thoughts are racing through my mind. Is she getting off to this shit while I'm sitting in the other room, just hoping she'll show me some fucking attention? It's like a punch to the gut, man. Later, she's in her room again, probably playing that goddamn game with her online buddy. I'm on the couch, just zoning out in front of the TV, trying to distract myself from the constant gnawing feeling that something's wrong between us. Suddenly, she comes out of her room to grab something, and she's got this big, stupid smile on her face. She's so damn cheerful, like she's on top of the fucking world. And all I can think is, why the hell aren't you like that with me anymore? It's like she's a different person when she's with this guy online, and it's eating me alive. I mean, I want to be happy for her if she's found something that makes her smile, but I just can't shake the feeling that I'm being left in the dust. A few days later, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, just trying to get my mind off things. We've known each other since college, and he lives about 7 minutes away by car, so I drop by his place every now and then. We were shooting the shit, and I suggested they come over to my place to play some board games, have a few drinks, just relax and catch up. I thought maybe having some friends over would lighten the mood at home. You know? Maybe Kristen would snap out of whatever funk she's in. But fuck, was I wrong. We get to my place, set up the board games, and I go to get Kristen, thinking she'd be excited to join us. But nope. She's in her room, headphones on, talking to that guy again while playing her game. I knocked on the door, called her name, but all she did was wave me off, like I was some kind of nuisance. I'm busy. You guys have fun without me, she says, not even looking up from the screen. I stood there for a second, just staring at the back of her head, feeling like a fucking idiot. She didn't give a shit that we had guests over, didn't care to be a part of it. It was like I didn't even matter. That night, after my friends left, I started vaping to calm my nerves. I don't even smoke, but I just needed something to do, something to take the edge off. I sat there, blowing clouds into the night, and I couldn't help but notice that Kristen's been texting someone a hell of a lot lately. Every time I catch a glimpse of her phone screen, she's typing away with a stupid grin on her face. And it's not like I'm trying to spy on her, but when someone's constantly glued to their phone, it's hard not to notice, especially when that someone's your girlfriend who's been acting distant as hell. I tried checking her computer again, hoping I'd find something that could explain what's been going on. But she's smart. There was nothing there. No suspicious emails, no chat logs, nothing. It's like she's got everything locked down, and that just makes me feel even more paranoid. Like, what the fuck is she hiding? Am I losing my mind here? Or is there something going on that I just can't see? We started seeing a family therapist a few months ago because I couldn't take it anymore. I thought maybe talking to someone would help us figure out what the fuck went wrong and how to fix it. We even moved to a new place, thinking that a change of scenery might help us hit the reset button on our relationship. And for a while, it worked. We started spending more time together, doing little things like cooking dinner or watching movies. It was nice, you know? It felt like we were finally getting back on track. I got so caught up in the moment that I decided to propose to her. It was at my dad's second wedding, one of those big emotional family gatherings where everyone's all smiles and tears. I thought it was the perfect time, the perfect setting. So, I got down on one knee in front of everyone, and I asked her to marry me. She said yes, and it felt like everything was finally falling into place. We had this heartfelt conversation afterward, just the two of us, talking about our future and how far we'd come. My dad even pulled me aside later, and we had this deep, emotional talk that left both of us in tears. It was one of those moments that just sticks with you, you know? A few weeks after that, I surprised Kristen with 2 tickets to Hawaii. I figured we could use a break, get away from all the bullshit and just enjoy each other's company for a while. And for a little bit, it seemed like the magic was back. We were having sex again, and it wasn't just going through the motions. It felt real, like we were reconnecting. I stopped handling things on my own and started thinking maybe we were going to be okay after all. But damn, was I wrong. I remember sitting in that hotel room in Hawaii, looking out at the ocean on this beautiful fucking day, and I started recording my thoughts on my phone. I wanted to have something to look back on when things got tough again, something to remind me of the good times. I also went through your comments, reading every single one and trying to respond as best I could. It was comforting, in a weird way, knowing that other people out there had been through similar shit and had come out the other side. But now, sitting here, thinking about everything that's happened, I can't help but wonder if I was just fooling myself all along. So when we got back home after 2 weeks in Hawaii, everything just went back to the same old shit. You'd think a vacation would change something, right? Like it'd give us a fresh start or something. But no, as soon as we walked through that fucking door, the routine swallowed us up again like nothing had ever happened. It's like those 2 weeks didn't even fucking matter. Kristen went straight back to her game, and I went back to being that guy who just existed around her. Same dull conversations, same lack of sex, same cold fucking bed. It was like we'd hit the reset button on our shitty lives instead of fixing anything. One day, I noticed that Kristen had left her computer on when she went to the bathroom. I don't even know what made me do it, but I found myself walking over to her desk and sitting down. Her game was still running, and I could see the chat window open. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on her messages. That's when I saw them. Messages with some asshole named Eden. The conversation was full of flirtation, little inside jokes, and these personal confessions that she'd never even shared with me. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just some online game anymore. This was a full-blown fucking affair. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. The more I scrolled, the worse it got. There were messages about how much fun they had playing together, how he made her laugh, how she looked forward to their late-night chats. And then there were those messages, the ones that cut me the deepest, the ones where she talked about me. She said she felt like she was living with a stranger, like she was trapped in a loveless marriage. She said she didn't know how to fix it, and that Eden made her feel alive again. I wanted to smash the fucking monitor right then and there, but I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking with rage. I started struggling with what the fuck to do next. I felt so fucking betrayed, but at the same time, I didn't want to destroy our family. Sam was still so little, and I didn't want him growing up with divorced parents. I decided to give Kristen a chance to explain herself, but I had no idea how to start that conversation. Every time I looked at her, all I could see were those messages, those fucking words she'd written about me. I'd open my mouth to say something, but the words would get stuck in my throat. I was too fucking angry, too hurt to think straight. And then, one night, we got into another one of our stupid fucking arguments. I don't even remember what it was about. Probably something small, like whose turn it was to take out the trash or some bullshit like that. But it escalated fast, and before I knew it, I was yelling at her, accusing her of spending more time with some loser from the internet than with her own fucking husband. She just stared at me, arms crossed, not saying a damn word. That's when I snapped. I slapped her right across the face. The sound echoed through the apartment, and everything went dead quiet. She looked at me with this mix of shock and fear, and I knew I'd fucked up big time. But instead of apologizing, I kicked the table, sending everything on it flying across the room. That's when I felt a sharp pain shoot up my leg. I'd kicked the damn thing so hard that I seriously injured myself. My leg swelled up almost instantly, and I could barely stand. Kristen was still frozen in place, probably too scared to even move. I wanted to say something, anything to break the silence, but all I could do was curse under my breath and limp towards the door. We ended up going to the hospital when my leg got too swollen for me to ignore. It was a fucking mess. The whole drive there, we didn't say a word to each other, just this heavy, awkward silence hanging between us. I could feel the tension in the air, like a thick fog that neither of us wanted to clear. I knew I should apologize for hitting her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It felt like if I said sorry, it'd be admitting that I was weak, that I'd let her push me to that point. At the hospital, they told me I'd gotten an infection, and that it'd be better if I stayed there for a few days to get it under control. Kristen left after they got me settled in, and I just lay there, staring up at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. I felt like a fucking failure, as a husband, as a father, as a man. But I couldn't stop thinking about those messages, about how she'd been sneaking around behind my back, confiding in some guy she'd never even met in person. It made me sick to my stomach. I was in the hospital for 4 days. We talked on the phone a few times, but it was all surface-level bullshit. How's your leg? Are you eating okay? When are you coming home? I could tell she didn't really want to talk, and honestly, I didn't want to see her either. I didn't want her to see me lying there, weak and pathetic, with tubes sticking out of my arm. They told me I was supposed to stay there for a week, but by the 4th day, I was done. I couldn't stand being there anymore, surrounded by the sterile smell of disinfectant and the constant beeping of machines. So when they said I could go home in a wheelchair, I took it. I didn't want to bother Kristen, so I paid a nurse to take me home. We lived in an apartment, so she helped me up to our floor and to the door. But when I opened it, I heard these loud, unmistakable moans coming from our bedroom. My heart fucking stopped. I wheeled myself down the hallway as fast as I could, my injured leg throbbing with every push. But when I got to the door, I lost my balance and fell out of the wheelchair, hitting my leg hard on the floor. The pain was blinding, but it wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing my wife, naked and tangled up with some other guy in our bed. She didn't even hear me fall. She was too busy fucking him. It took everything in me not to scream, not to crawl over there and drag him off her. But I was so fucking helpless, just lying there on the floor, trying to pull myself back into the wheelchair. When Kristen finally heard me and looked up, that bastard was already scrambling out of bed, grabbing his clothes. He saw me on the ground and got this smug, cocky look on his face. He didn't even bother to hurry as he got dressed, like he knew I couldn't do shit to stop him. I watched him slap her on the ass a couple of times as he pulled on his pants. The nurse, who'd seen the whole thing, just stood there wide-eyed, probably too shocked to move. And me? I just lay there feeling like the biggest piece of shit on the planet. That night, I couldn't sleep for shit. I mean, how the fuck could I? After everything I'd seen, the way my world had just crumbled around me, there was no way I was going to close my eyes and pretend everything was okay. I was lying there in the dark, in my makeshift bed in the office, staring up at the ceiling like it had all the answers. My mind was racing, and no matter what I tried, I just couldn't shut it off. The worst thoughts were running through my head, like a fucking horror show on repeat, and I was powerless to stop it. I kept thinking about Kristen, about that bastard, about how everything I thought I knew was just a lie. I kept going over everything in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. How did we go from being that couple who loved each other, who planned a future together, to this fucking mess? It was like every memory we'd made was tainted now, like every good moment we had was just another reminder of how far we'd fallen. I felt so fucking alone, lying there in the dark, with no one to turn to, no one to hold me and tell me it was going to be okay. Because it wasn't. It wasn't going to be okay, not by a long shot. When the sun finally started to creep through the blinds, I dragged myself out of bed, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My body was exhausted, but my mind was still in overdrive. I hobbled to the kitchen, still in that damn wheelchair, and made myself a cup of coffee. I needed something, anything to wake me up, to snap me out of this fucking nightmare. As I sat there at the table, staring into my mug, trying to gather my thoughts, she walked in. That fucking slut, that bitch, walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just destroyed our lives. I looked up at her, and all I could feel was this burning rage inside me, this overwhelming need to get some answers, to understand how she could do this to me, to us. "What the fuck was that yesterday?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I was seething inside. And you know what she did? She fucking smirked at me like it was all a big joke, like she didn't give a shit about how much she'd hurt me. "Why are you acting like this is such a big deal?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're the one who's been so distant, who's been pushing me away. What did you expect?" That's when I lost it. "How long?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. "How long have you been fucking him?" She didn't even hesitate. "About a month now," she said, so casually, like she was talking about the weather or what she had for lunch. My jaw dropped. I couldn't fucking believe it. 1 week. One fucking week after we got back from Hawaii, after I thought we were finally getting back on track, and she was already in bed with this asshole. My heart started pounding in my chest, so hard I thought it was going to fucking explode. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel this intense, crushing pain in my chest. It felt like I was having a heart attack, like my body was finally giving up on me too. I wheeled myself back to my office as fast as I could, slammed the door shut, and collapsed onto the couch, clutching my chest. I thought I was going to die right there, and a part of me almost wished I would. Anything to escape the pain, the betrayal, the fucking reality of it all. But after a few minutes, the pain started to fade, and I realized it wasn't a heart attack, just a panic attack, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. It didn't matter though, because the emotional pain was still there, still ripping me apart from the inside out. When I finally managed to get myself together, I came out of the office, and there she was, just standing in the living room like she owned the place. "Well, bitch," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "get the fuck out of this apartment. I'm the one paying for it, and I can't stand looking at you anymore." She turned to me, arms crossed, and gave me this smug look. "And if I don't leave, what are you going to do?" she asked, her voice dripping with venom. "You going to hit me again?" I clenched my fists, feeling that anger bubble up inside me again. "With fucking pleasure," I shot back, my voice low and dangerous. And that's when the real fight started. We went at it, yelling at each other, throwing insults, and getting right up in each other's faces. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears, feel the heat of my rage consuming me. She was pushing all my buttons, and I was ready to fucking explode. But then she did something that pushed me over the edge. She grabbed Sam, our little boy, and tried to take him out of the apartment with her. I lost it. I fucking lost it. "Leave him here," I screamed, trying to wheel myself over to her, but she was faster, and the next thing I knew, she'd knocked me out of the wheelchair, and I was sprawled on the floor, my injured leg screaming in pain. She didn't even look back as she walked out the door with Sam, leaving me there, broken and bleeding on the inside. The next few days were a blur. I just sat there in that goddamn wheelchair, listening to sad music, drinking until I couldn't feel anything, and smoking like a chimney. The apartment was dark, empty, and cold, just like how I felt inside. I couldn't even bring myself to move, to eat, to do anything but sit there and wallow in my own misery. I felt like the biggest piece of shit on the planet, and the worst part was, I couldn't even bring myself to care anymore. It was like I was trapped in this dark, endless pit, and there was no way out. But then my friends came over. They pulled me out of that hellhole I'd created for myself, got me back on my feet, literally and figuratively. They didn't let me wallow in my own self-pity. They dragged my ass out of that apartment, took me to the park, forced me to walk, to breathe in the fresh air, to remember what it felt like to be alive. We went bowling, we laughed, we drank, but this time it wasn't to drown out the pain. It was to start feeling again, to start healing. And then my sister showed up. She's always been my rock, and when I saw her standing there in the doorway, I just broke down. I told her everything, about Kristen, about that bastard Eden, about how I felt like my life was falling apart. She didn't say much, just held me while I cried, while I let out all the pain and anger and frustration that had been eating me alive. And when I was done, she looked me in the eye and told me I was going to be okay, that we'd get through this together. I stopped drinking after that. I knew I couldn't keep going down that path, couldn't let myself drown in the bottle. Instead, we spent our days together, walking, talking, just being there for each other. She pulled me out of that dark place, out of that hole I dug for myself. And now, I'm sitting here, writing all of this down while she's sleeping in the next room, finally able to stand on my own 2 feet again, both physically and emotionally. So, my wife and I met at this restaurant today, some shitty place she picked that was supposed to be neutral ground. I wasn't in the mood for any of this, but I went anyway, hoping we could finally get some clarity on this mess. At first, everything seemed all right. She started talking, her voice all soft and emotional, about how hard this period has been for her, how our routine had sucked the life out of her. She even teared up a bit, which normally would have tugged at my heartstrings, but not this time. I was just sitting there, staring at her, thinking, "Yeah, it's been hard for you. What about me?" She kept going on about how she felt like she was drowning, how she needed support, someone to lean on, and as she talked, I felt my blood start to boil. She's sitting there, pouring her heart out about how she needed male warmth, and all I could think was, are you fucking kidding me? I was right there, trying to be that support, and you didn't give a shit. But I kept my mouth shut, just nodding along like some kind of idiot, while she went on and on about her feelings. Then she started talking about that asshole she'd been fucking. She said he started out as just someone she played games with, someone who understood her, who emotionally supported her. I wanted to laugh in her face, but instead, I just sat there feeling like a damn fool. She went on to tell me how they met up in person for the first time, and how they kissed like it was some kind of romantic fucking fairy tale. Apparently, this guy had gone through some tough shit, too. He was a former drug addict or something, and she felt sorry for him. So much so that she decided to give him a blowjob in his fucking car. I shit you not. She actually said that to me, sitting across the table in this dingy restaurant, like it was some kind of normal thing to admit. She looked me dead in the eye and said that everything started from there. The room started spinning, and I felt like I was going to be sick right there in front of her. My breath caught in my throat, and I could barely breathe. My mind was racing, my heart pounding like it was going to burst out of my chest. I was done. I couldn't sit there for one more fucking second. As soon as I left the restaurant, I called my sister and my best friend. They didn't even hesitate. They dropped whatever they were doing and came right over to my place. We spent the rest of the day together, just hanging out, trying to get my mind off everything. They could see how close I was to the edge, how badly I was hurting, and they made sure I didn't do anything stupid. If it hadn't been for them, I'm not sure I'd be here right now, typing this out. You know what I mean. A few days later, Kristen suggested that we talk about property and the custody of Sam. It's been about 2 weeks since we had that conversation at the restaurant, and those 2 weeks have been a fucking blur. Nothing interesting happened, just the same empty feeling, the same routine of getting up, going through the motions, and falling into bed at night, wondering how the hell I got here. But there was one thing that stood out. Kristen's parents came over one day, completely unaware that we were done. I don't know what came over me, but when they showed up, I played along with her. I pretended like everything was normal, like we were still together. Looking back, I don't know why the hell I did that. Maybe it was just easier than dealing with the truth, easier than admitting to them that their daughter had torn my life apart. But whatever the reason, it felt like I'd finally hit rock bottom, like I was so broken down that I could be used for whatever bullshit Kristen wanted to pull. Like soap, or some other disposable thing you just throw away when you're done with it. When we finally sat down to talk about splitting up our stuff, she brought her lover with her. Can you fucking believe that? She had the nerve to bring that scrawny, tattooed bastard with her, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. They sat there, side by side, trying to act all cool and collected, while I just stared at them in disbelief. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to punch that smug look off his face, but I didn't. I just sat there fuming on the inside. They started putting pressure on me, saying shit like, I'm taking the car you bought for myself, as if that was just something I'd agree to. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you fucking serious? I thought to myself. I mean, who the hell does she think she is? She wanted to take about 90% of our property, all the stuff I'd worked my ass off to earn, and she expected me to just roll over and give it to her. Well, I'll admit it. I played the part of the cuckold, the spineless idiot, and agreed to it. But in the back of my mind, I knew I'd have to find a way to backtrack, to change my mind once I'd figured out how to handle this mess. Later, I found out that her lover is poor as dirt. He's got nothing, no money, no job, just a tall, tattooed, skinny frame that she's apparently fallen head over heels for. I can't wrap my head around it. Girls, do you really go for guys like that? Is that all it takes? I didn't know what the fuck to do after that, so I called up my friends and told them everything. They said they'd take care of it, and they set up a meeting with Kristen for tomorrow. I don't know what they're planning, but at this point, I'm ready to let them handle it. I'm done trying to figure this out on my own. I also decided to go see a psychologist recently. Thought maybe they could help me make sense of all this shit, help me get my head straight. But all it did was open up more of my old traumas, shit I'd buried deep down and didn't want to deal with. The psychologist told me it was normal, that I just needed to keep coming back, but I don't know. It felt like ripping open an old wound, and I'm not sure how much more pain I can take right now. So that's where things stand, guys. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell to do. still trying to piece together the shattered remains of my life. Thanks to everyone who's been leaving supportive comments and advice. I can't tell you how much it means to me right now. It's been the only thing keeping me going some days. So as my friends told me, my wife isn't even remotely interested in the idea that the stuff I paid for should stay with me. I mean, the nerve of this woman, right? I bought all this shit, busted my ass to make sure we had a comfortable life, and now she's acting like she's entitled to it all. And you know what? I'm starting to think that her broke-ass lover is the one pulling the strings here. She's been having problems at work, big problems. Like she hasn't done a damn thing for days. I don't know if she's too busy screwing around with this guy or if he's feeding her some kind of bullshit, but it's messing with her head. And what's worse, I'm really fucking scared something's happened to our kid. She's so wrapped up in her little affair that I'm terrified she's neglecting Sam. So I decided to get serious and consult with a lawyer. I dragged my sister along for moral support, and my mom even showed up. Yeah, my mom, who, by the way, is a former drug addict, and we all know there's no such thing as a former addict. She recently got out of rehab, but like clockwork, she's back on the junk. And wouldn't you know it, just as I'm dealing with my own shitstorm, she pops back into my life. Apparently, she heard through the grapevine that I'm having some problems, so she figured now's the perfect time to swoop in and remind me that she still exists, probably hoping I'll throw her a few bucks to feed her habit. Let me tell you, drugs are the fucking devil, and nowhere is that clearer than in my mom. Anyway, back to the lawyer. The first one I met with was a joke, total waste of time. The guy couldn't have been more disinterested in my case if he tried. I'm sitting there, pouring my heart out about all the bullshit I've been dealing with, and this asshole is just nodding along like he's listening to the weather report. So we started looking for another one, and we eventually found this guy who looks like Morgan Freeman. I kid you not, the resemblance is uncanny. But more importantly, he was a total pro. I'm talking cool, calm, and collected. This guy knew his shit. The minute he opened his mouth, I knew I was in good hands. He laid out a plan that actually made sense, gave me solid advice, and had this quiet confidence that made me feel like I might actually come out of this nightmare with a little dignity intact. The man's got charisma for days, and he surprised the hell out of me with how on top of everything he was. Today, I saw Sam for the first time in what felt like forever. It was like this wave of strength hit me, you know? Like I suddenly remembered why I'm fighting so hard. I looked at my little boy, and all I could think was, I'm not going to be the dad who gets walked all over. I refuse to let that happen. I've been kicked around enough, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take advantage of me again. Seeing Sam reminded me that I need to be strong, not just for myself, but for him too. He needs a dad who's got his shit together, not one who's falling apart at the seams. So we were all geared up for court today, but wouldn't you fucking know it? Mother Nature decided to throw a tantrum. The weather was so bad that the hearing got postponed. Just my luck, right? You get all psyched up, ready to finally take a stand, and then some goddamn storm rolls in and screws it all up. I guess I should be used to things not going my way by now, but it still pisses me off. In the meantime, I figured I'd try to distract myself, so I started looking for new girls on Tinder. Let me tell you, that's been an adventure in itself. I've had 2 dates that were absolute disasters, and one that was surprisingly decent, until my mom showed up and ruined the whole thing. It's almost like she's got a sixth sense for when things are going okay for me, and she just can't fucking stand it. So here's how it went down. The first date was with this girl who looked nothing like her profile pictures. I mean, I get it. We all try to put our best foot forward, but this was straight up catfishing. She showed up looking like a completely different person, and the whole time I was just sitting there thinking, what the fuck have I gotten myself into? We tried to make small talk, but it was like pulling teeth, and I couldn't get out of there fast enough. The second one was even worse. This chick spent the entire date talking about her ex-boyfriend, and not in the I'm over him kind of way. It was more like, I'm still in love with him, and you're just a placeholder until he comes crawling back. I barely managed to choke down my drink before I made some excuse to leave. But then, there was this third date. She was actually pretty cool, funny, and we had a decent time. Things were going well, until my mom decided to crash the party. I don't even know how she found me, but she showed up high as a fucking kite and started making a scene. Needless to say, that date ended real quick. The girl bolted, and I was left dealing with my mom's bullshit again. So here I am, sitting on the balcony, sipping on a beer, and trying to make sense of it all. It's late, the city's quieting down, and for the first time in a long while, I feel like I can actually breathe. Writing this all down has been weirdly therapeutic, like I'm getting rid of some of the weight I've been carrying around. I don't know if it's the beer talking, but it feels good to just sit here and reflect on all the craziness that's been going on. Maybe it's not all doom and gloom. Maybe this is just the start of something better. Today I got a call that I'd been waiting for and dreading at the same time. They finally scheduled the court date. I don't know what it was, but hearing that date made everything feel a little too real. Up until now, it's been this endless nightmare. But now there's a deadline, an actual day where everything might finally be settled. My stomach twisted when I heard the news, like someone had just dropped a cinder block inside me. The clock's ticking, and I've got to get my shit together fast. Before I even had time to fully process that call, my buddy came over and dragged me out on this trip we'd planned a while back. It was supposed to be a getaway, something to clear my head before the shitstorm that's about to hit. We packed up our gear, threw everything into his truck, and headed out to the mountains. For 3 days, it was just me, him, and the wilderness. We hiked up rocky trails, pitched our tents under the stars, and sat around a campfire talking about everything and nothing. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. The kind of peace where the only sounds are the crackling fire and the wind rustling through the trees. It felt like I could actually breathe out there, away from all the bullshit waiting for me back home. But of course, reality has a way of kicking you in the nuts just when you think you've found a moment of calm. When I got back home, the first thing I noticed was that my mom was gone. No note, no nothing, just gone. I was worried at first, thinking maybe she'd relapsed or something. But then I went to check my safe, and sure enough, the $5,000 I had stashed in there was gone too. That's when it hit me. She didn't just leave, she fucking robbed me. After everything, after I took her in, tried to help her, she took off with my money and left me high and dry. I can't say I was surprised, but damn, it still hurt. It's like no matter how much you try to help some people, they'll still fuck you over without a second thought. It's the story of my life, I guess. Now, here I am, the day before court, feeling like the weight of the world is pressing down on me. I'm trying to get my head straight, but it's hard when everything's been such a clusterfuck lately. I keep thinking about what's going to happen in that courtroom, about what they're going to decide about Sam, about my life. I know I've got to be strong, got to show up and fight, but part of me just wants to crawl into bed and sleep until this is all over. But that's not an option, is it? I've got to face it head on, whether I like it or not. An hour before court and my nerves are shot. I'm pacing around, trying to keep my hands from shaking, trying to breathe normally, but it feels like my chest is going to explode. I keep telling myself that I'm ready, that I've done everything I can, but it doesn't stop the fear from creeping in. I glance at the clock every few minutes, each tick dragging me closer to whatever the hell's about to go down. I start running through everything in my head, what I'm going to say, how I'm going to act, but it all feels like a blur. When we finally get to court, the atmosphere is tense as hell. The room is cold, clinical, with everyone sitting around like they're just waiting to see someone get torn apart. I sit down and try to keep my head up, try to look confident, even though I feel like I'm drowning inside. I can see Kristen sitting across from me, that same smug look on her face that makes me want to punch something. But I don't let it show. I just stare straight ahead, focusing on the judge, on the lawyer who looks like Morgan Freeman sitting next to me, ready to go to war. The start of the court proceedings is a blur of legal jargon and formalities. Everyone's talking in these stiff, detached voices like we're discussing the weather instead of my fucking life. But then it starts to get real. The lawyers start presenting their cases, and I feel like I'm under a microscope. Every little detail of my life being picked apart. Kristen's lawyer tries to paint me as some unfit dad, like I'm the problem, not her. I can feel my blood boiling, but I keep my cool. My lawyer, Morgan Freeman, steps up and starts tearing their bullshit apart piece by piece. I'm sitting there, trying to keep it together, but inside, I'm just praying that things go my way. By the time it's over, I'm emotionally drained. It feels like I've been through a war, every nerve in my body frayed and raw. I wish I could say I walked out of there feeling victorious, but it's not that simple. I know I've won something, but at the same time, I've lost so much. It's a strange mix of relief and emptiness that I can't quite shake. Sam will be with me sometimes, and with her sometimes. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing, I guess. A year and a half later, and man, what a fucking ride it's been. If you'd told me back then that I'd be where I am now, I would have laughed in your face and probably told you to fuck off. But here I am, standing on the other side of the shitstorm, bruised and battered, but still breathing. Life's got a way of kicking you in the balls and then handing you a beer to say, well, you survived. So here's a little something to take the edge off. So here's the big update. My ex-wife's lover, that piece of shit who thought he could waltz into my life and take everything from me, started using drugs again. Yeah, no surprise there, right? I always knew he was a fuck-up, but apparently it didn't take long for him to go back to his old habits. And as karma would have it, the kid's now fully under my care. At first, my ex tried to fight it, like she actually gave a damn, but then she just gave up. She started using too. Different crap, but still it's the same old story. She's gone down a dark path, and honestly, I'm just glad Sam's out of that mess. It's been tough, but I'm doing my best to be the dad Sam needs. I didn't think I'd ever be in this position. Full-time single dad, trying to juggle work, parenting, and not losing my fucking mind. But you know what? I'm handling it. I'm making it work, and every day I feel like I'm getting a little better at it. Sam's my world now, and I'll be damned if I let him go through the same shit I did. And on a brighter note, a month ago, I met someone. Yeah, you heard me right. I found a girl who I think might be the one. She's everything my ex wasn't. Kind, understanding, funny as hell, and she actually gives a shit about me. We clicked from the moment we met, and I can actually see a future with her. It's wild, right? After everything, I didn't think I'd ever feel like this again. But here I am, falling for someone who makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, I'm not as broken as I thought. So wish me luck, because I'm going all in on this one. In a moment of pure gratitude, I gave my sister a car as a gift. She deserves it more than anyone, considering she dropped everything to come and support me when I was at my lowest. She was there when I needed someone the most, and I'll never forget that. I wanted to show her how much I appreciate everything she's done for me. And honestly, seeing her face light up when I handed her the keys was worth every penny. But not everything's sunshine and rainbows. My mom, my drug addict mother, passed away, and I know this is going to sound cold as hell, but I don't care. Or at least that's what I keep telling myself. Deep down, though, there's a part of me that does care, because no matter how fucked up she was still my mom. It's a weird feeling, mourning someone who was never really there for you, who caused more pain than joy. But it is what it is. I guess part of me just hopes she's found some kind of peace, wherever the hell she ended up. Oh, and here's the kicker. I moved to Miami. Yeah, the Sunshine State, where the beaches are hot, the people are hotter, and the humidity will make your balls stick to your thighs like you wouldn't believe. But you know what? I fucking love it here. The vibe is different, the energy is alive, and it feels like a fresh start. Plus, I've started learning Spanish, which is pretty much a necessity around here. Who knew I'd be adding bilingual to my resume at this point in my life? Now let's talk conclusions, shall we? Because if there's one thing I've learned from all this bullshit, it's that life is one giant fucking joke, and you've got to learn to laugh at it, or it'll chew you up and spit you out. So here's my stand-up routine for you, fresh from the school of hard knocks. First off, never trust a skinny guy with tattoos. Seriously, if you see one sniffing around your wife, kick his ass to the curb before he has a chance to fuck up your life. These guys aren't just bad news. They're the kind of news that comes with a headline like, "Local idiot loses everything to tattooed douchebag." And let's talk about the ex for a second. You think you know someone after years of being together, but people can surprise you in all the worst ways. One day you're planning a future together, and the next, she's blowing some loser in a parking lot. It's like life's little way of saying, hey, don't get too comfortable because I'm about to flip the script on your sorry ass. And mothers, God bless them. They're supposed to be the ones who love you unconditionally, but mine, she loved heroin more. And yeah, that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. You've got to learn to let go of people who drag you down, even if they're family. Because at the end of the day, you've only got one life, and you sure as hell don't want to spend it cleaning up someone else's mess. Now, Miami, let me tell you, if you're looking for a fresh start, this is the place to be. Just make sure you're ready for the heat, both in terms of the weather and the women. And for God's sake, Learn a little Spanish before you get here, or you'll find yourself ordering tacos in English and getting a side of confusion with your meal. And the biggest lesson of all, life is going to throw some serious shit your way. You're going to get knocked down, you're going to get your heart broken, and you're going to lose things you thought you couldn't live without. But here's the thing, you can live without them. You're stronger than you think, tougher than you know, and at the end of the day, you've got to learn to laugh at the absurdity of it all.